Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am really excited to share today's video with you. It is highly requested, and that would be the sleep training video, how I have been sleep training the twins. Now, the irony is not lost on me that at this current time, they're not sleeping great, which we will talk about. The fact that it can ebb and flow. It's not like one night they sleep through the night and you're good to go from there on out. So I feel very tired filming this, but I'm going to share with you how I have sleep trained them, where we're at, kind of how we've ebbed and flowed, and let you know where we're at with Twinny Sleep Guide. So before we get going, if you're not subscribed, please do so. It is a fresh year. We have fresh video content, lots of baby stuff, life stuff, travel stuff, mommy stuff, just all this stuff. So stick around, subscribe so you don't miss out on this stuff. Okay, so let's talk about sleep. The twins are 8 months old now. So let me catch you up real quick to kind of where we got to the point of sleep training. They were born a month early, and I have found, at least as far as sleep is concerned, they kind of follow the trend as if, so like the 4-month sleep regression really hit more close to 5 months. You see what I'm saying? So they slept in our room from birth, of course, up until about 5 months, and they slept in their SNOO bassinets. We didn't turn them on for the first 6 weeks, maybe. They just slept in them swaddled. And as far as whether I thought the SNOOs were worth it or not, I loved having the SNOOs. I do think it helped them stay asleep. They loved the motion of the SNOO. We kept the movement restrictor on the entire time. So even though if they would get really upset, the sound would increase, the motion would stop at level 2 and not go up to level 4, just because that's what I felt comfortable with. So I liked the motion. I think it did help them stay asleep longer once they started sleeping through the night, which I'll get to in a sec. And I also like the fact that they are strapped in, so I didn't worry about them rolling. They are very expensive. We got ours on Facebook Marketplace and were able to resell them for as much as we paid for them the first time. So highly recommend checking out a used SNOO if the price tag is a little bit of a bug eye number to you. So love the SNOOs. I don't think it's like holy grail, but if I had another baby, I would get a SNOO again. I would say around week 10 for us, something just flipped a switch and they started sleeping through the night. You know, you reach a certain point, your pediatrician gives you the green light. I think for us it was at our 2-month appointment. Like, you don't need to be waking them up anymore to feed every 3 hours. Our babies were born small, so they were hitting their growth curve where they needed to at that point, where it was fine if they slept through the night. And at that point we had started to stretch a little bit longer, like 4 hours or so, but I was still waking them at the same time. And then I think around, the 2-month, 8-week, 10-week, somewhere in there mark, I stopped waking them at the same time. So if one woke up, I would feed them and then put them back to sleep. And that really killed me for a while because it felt like opposite, but they kind of just worked it out. It's at that age, you can't sleep train them. They're just learning their bodies, learning their sleep, and you just survive. And so again, around 10 weeks, I think is when Hudson started sleeping through the night. I think at that point they were doing like a 7 or 8 hour stretch. So depending on when they actually went to bed and when they woke up, we were getting those longer stretches. Harper, I think, has always woken up during the night around like 3 or 4 and was hungry. So, but still really good. And I was still waking myself up to pump. I will talk about like feeding and pumping and everything. So at that point I was still waking myself up I think I would go like 4 hours, maybe 5, but at that point 5 was still pushing it to pump during the night. So they slept really well from about 2 months to 4.5 or 5 months. And at 4.5 months, they start to hit their 4-month sleep regression. They start to go into more of like a normal sleep rhythm, where you kind of go into a deep sleep and come to a lighter sleep and go back, but they kind of come up to the light sleep and don't understand how they can get like they kind of wake themselves up and they can't get back down. So at the 5-month mark, we really actually moved them to their cribs, not because they were waking up more. It's more convenient if they're waking up more to have them next to me. But Hudson, he was like tapping out. His head was hitting the top of the SNOO because he is a long little boy. So we decided to move them to their cribs. I did, I think, cry the first night we moved them to their cribs. It was really hard, but it was okay. Just rip off the Band-Aid and they were fine. I was like glued to the monitor that first night. So at the 5-month mark, but for us, we waited until 6 months when we were sure our babies had kind of hit that 5-month mark. That's when Taking Care of Babies, which is the program we followed, suggests to start sleep training. We started the ABCs of sleep from Taking Care of Babies, and essentially we followed it pretty closely for their nighttime sleep, but modified for us. Here's what kind of led us. So between months 5 and 6, it got to a point where when they'd wake up in the night, I would nurse them and they'd fall back to sleep. But they were waking up so often every time. It was just easy for me to nurse them and put them back to sleep that it was getting to be like 8 to 10 times a night. And it wasn't like together tandem. They were like one, then the other, like every hour. I was truly not sleeping. I was not well. It was very, very hard. And it was like, okay, nope, we have to make a change. Essentially, one, I highly recommend getting the ABCs of Sleep course from Taking Care of Babies, but essentially it's kind of like Ferber method-y if you're familiar, which means they start to cry and then you give it a certain amount of time, then you go in and just check on them, soothe them, and then leave. And then, you know, you give it a little bit longer time if they start to cry again, a little bit longer time. So a few keys though. Taking Care of Babies, I'll call it TCB because it's just a lot to say. So TCB says to do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then from then on just 15, 15, 15, 15 until they fall asleep. And the big things here are that you don't want to pick them up. And we followed this, and I do think it worked and it was helpful for us because you're basically reassuring them but not rewarding them for crying. So if they're laying there crying, you don't want to be like, oh my gosh, maybe blah, blah, blah. And some people do, and that's totally fine. I'm just saying this is what we did because I was so desperate for sleep. I was like, okay, we're gonna really try this the way she says. So you just reassure them for like 15 to 20 seconds because more than that, sometimes the crying escalates. They're like, why are you just standing here and you're not even picking me up? You're going in saying, I'm here. You know, kiss, kiss, you're okay, shh, whatever you need to do to soothe them. And then she says not to put the pacifier back in their mouth because that could, you know, train a bad habit too. And we did that in the beginning because they still weren't getting the idea, but we would kind of take the pacifier, and if we didn't put it in their mouth, we kind of put it in their hand so then they could start learning to do it themselves. So I had the timer on my phone, stopwatch, and if they started to cry, I'd wait 3 minutes, I'd go in and soothe, come back and wait. If they started to cry again, I would start the timer for 5 minutes and then go and check on them. And then I would do 8 minutes if it happened again. We only had to do this for 3 nights and I never had to go past 8 minutes. By that point, within those 8 minutes, they would get back to sleep. And it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Again, I was in such a place that I was desperate for sleep. So I'm like, it's okay. I know they're safe. And you know, you want to make sure that you know that they are getting enough calories during the day, that they aren't actually hungry. But I will say there's mother's instinct. I mean, still there are times, honestly, I'd say almost at least once a night with one of them lately, at least I've been nursing because it's like a different kind of cry. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to nurse them. Or you just get so desperate and you know it's going to work. So you just nurse them back to sleep. But now I'm trying to kind of reverse that. We're in a bad cycle. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we're going through something. I'm not sure, maybe teething. So like I said, after 3 nights, they were sleeping through the night. And by that, I mean like 6, 7, 8 hour stretches at a time, which was so nice. Now, as far as pumping nursing goes, because my body was used to like nursing 10 times a night. So I think the first 2 nights, I did wake myself up once during the night to pump. And then I just was like, okay, we're just gonna let ourselves sleep. And yes, they are overflowing by the morning, but it took maybe like 2 days for that to start to regulate. And at this point, at 8 months, we are good. So like I said in the beginning, just because, you know, they sleep through the night one time doesn't mean you're good to go for life. They've been struggling a little bit with their sleep lately, and I'm back to being up a lot during the night. And you know, if you're watching this because you have twins, it's really hard because it just feels opposite. One night Harper sleeps through the night and Hudson is up like every other hour, and then the next night it's swapped, and so you're just like, oh my gosh, am I ever gonna sleep again? Alec definitely helps me. We'll take turns during the night. We've never done like the shift thing, which we really should, so that one of us can be getting some decent sleep, since we both wake up when, you know, they're crying on the monitor. But we just, I don't know, we don't want to like sleep in different beds, and we just have made it this far, so we're just gonna keep going. But sometimes he'll go soothe them, because I definitely feel like sometimes they get more upset with me, like when they know it's me and I'm not feeding them, as opposed to him trying to soothe them. And what we do for soothing them, it really depends on your baby. We'll just sort of shush. We don't want to be so loud and be there and so long that it would start to disturb the other baby. We kind of will like hold their hands up by their face and just sort of hold them secure, shush, or put a hand on their chest or their back. And another thing with the twins, it is crazy to me that they do not wake each other up. One thing we have never done is separate them. From day one, they have slept next to each other in the same room. I know it's really hard to reverse that. So I know if we did sleep train them separately, it'd be really hard to bring them back in the same room where they're not used to that crying from the other sibling. They do not wake each other up, which is wild, because sometimes I truly am like, I'm gonna have tinnitus. Like my ears are bleeding listening to these decibels that they can hit when they are crying. And the other one is sound asleep. But the one thing that does wake them up is if I do need to like nurse Harper. If I sit in the chair in the nursery and Hudson is sleeping in his crib there, he will wake up. I don't know if he can smell me or if he hears like the noise of Harper nursing, but that will wake him up, which is just not convenient. So I usually have to go into like the loft or the guest bedroom, or Alex sometimes will bring them into bed. I mean, again, I try to really avoid nursing. Right now what I'm doing is, if we do, you know, the 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, if we get to that point and they're still crying, I will nurse him. One, because it's just, I don't like letting them cry for that long. Kind of mother's instinct will tell me if they're just tired crying or if this is different crying. And then if it's like 3 a.m. and I've already been up at 12 and 1 and 2, like I'm nursing you back to sleep because I'm tired, and let's just be realistic here once in a while. So I hope this was helpful. I think that's all I had to say about where we are with sleep training. Basically, taking care of babies has been great. I highly recommend the newborn plan she has. Those tips were helpful, but I feel like with newborn twins, you really are just surviving for like a long time. You're not really necessarily following any sort of plan, and you know, you don't sleep train until 5 months old. Or 6 months for us. So that is how it has worked for us. It wasn't as hard and as heart-wrenching as I thought it would be. They're okay. I knew they were safe and clean and fed, and I knew that I needed to get some sleep so that I could be a good mom to them, because a sleep-deprived mom for months on end is not going to be a great mom. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If I forgot anything important that I realize as I'm editing this video, which I oftentimes do, I will leave any extra notes in the description below. Thanks guys, see you on the next one, bye.